Hi everybody, we're going to take notes on the 7th grade Common Core lesson 6.1 and 6.2. We're talking about rational numbers and we're going to be converting them between fractions, decimals, and percents as well as comparing them with and without a number line. You need to be able to go ahead and convert a percent to a decimal to a percent, and then you also need to be able to compare them. Fractions is something we've already talked about, so in examples 5 and 6, we'll be reviewing those from a previous chapter. In the first example, they're asking 7% to be changed into a decimal. The word percent represents out of 100. So 7% is 7 out of 100. And that is the same as 7 hundredths, because it's 7 out of 100. If I were to take 7% and move my decimal point from behind the 7 over 2 places, it then goes 0.07. So when taking a percent to a decimal, I'm moving the decimal point 2 places, and I'm moving it to the left, because 7% is 7 out of 100, which is 7 hundredths, which looks like 0.75. In example 2, I have 225%. That's 225 out of 100. Now, this is more than 100%, so I know that it has to be more than 2. So if I were to have my original 225, I still move my decimal point 2 places so that it's 2.25, because it's 225 out of 100, which means it's more than 100, 2 more. So 2 out of 2 and then 225 hundredths. So I'm moving my decimal point 2 places again to the left. Regardless of what numbers are listed there, you find the location of the decimal point, which is behind the original number, and move it 2 places to the left. And you got to remember that a percent is always out of 100. In example 3 and 4, we're taking a decimal and moving it to a percent. This is 0.3. This is also can be read as 3/10 or 30 hundredths. Well, because I'm looking for a percent that's out of 100, I look at it as 30 out of 100, which is 30%, which happens to be moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. Now, each place value I move, either from a percent to a decimal or a decimal percent, is going to be a place value, and each place value represents 10. So when I'm going ahead and making it out of 100, I move 2 place values. And in this case, I'm moving it to the right. So in example 4, I know it's greater than 1, so I know my percent has to be more than 100%. I move it 2 places to the right for 166.6 repeating percent. Because if I were to look at this, that's 1 and 66 hundredths repeating. And remember, a percent is out of 100, so it's 66%. And as you've noticed, because there are the 3 dots there, I've indicated that 0.6 is repeating with a bar over it. So let's recap. In examples 1 and 2, I'm moving 2 decimal places to the left. And in examples 3 and 4, I'm moving 2 decimal places to the right. Now, as I compare in 5 and 6 examples, I need to go ahead and write them into forms that is going to make it the easiest for me to go ahead and compare them just by looking at them. Sometimes fractions make that difficult. So I highly recommend anytime you have fractions, decimals, and percents, you either change them all the decimals or all the percents. I personally like decimals, so that's the way I'm going to show you. So in this first example of number 5, I have 17%. That's 17 out of 100. That's 17 hundredths. And 17 hundredths looks like this, because I've moved 2 decimal places to the left. So 17% and 0.17 are equivalent values. One is written as a percent, one is written as a decimal. 4/25. We did this a while back. 4 out of 25 is the same as 4 divided by 25. We're able to use a calculator, so all you're going to do is type in 4 divided by 25. You're going to use a calculator. It's as easy as 4 divided by 25. It ends up being 0.16 or 16 hundredths. Now, which one is greater? 17 hundredths is larger, so the alligator eats the bigger number, and I write a greater than symbol between the 2. In example 6, I'm going to convert all of them to a decimal again. This is 38%. That's 38 out of 100, which is 38 hundredths. And it looks like this, 38 hundredths. 2 decimal places to the left. This is 8 25ths. Well, 8 divided by 25 is 0.32. And this is already written as a decimal as 0.41. Now, anytime we're converting from a percent to a decimal, decimal to percent, fractions, percents, we're creating an equivalent representation of it. So these 3 decimals represent the same amount as this percent. This decimal represents the same amount as this fraction. So now as I look at them, if I want to put them in order, smallest, middle, biggest. Now, if I choose to go ahead and do so on the number line, with my number line there has to be arrows on both parts of the number line, indicating that the line goes on forever into infinity. I go ahead and have to label the line, and then I kind of shade in a dot to indicate where that actual number I'm graphing goes. So I have to go all the way from 32 hundredths to 41 hundredths. And I may choose to go ahead and say 30 hundredths, 35 hundredths, 40 hundredths. I may choose to do that and then indicate that this is 32 hundredths. I may indicate that that is 38 hundredths, and that is 41 hundredths. So I can go ahead and write on my line, and I'm going to zoom in on this part. So I've gone ahead and I've indicated the dots as to the points I'm graphing, but the lines as to what I've labeled the number line as. When you're doing a graph, it's important that whatever you're labeling, these integers, the intervals, they have to be equal. I can't do this. Put a dot here and say this is 32. I can't put a dot here and say this is 38 hundredths, and I can't put a dot here and say that's 41. Those are not equal. This is 6 hundredths away, and this is 3 hundredths away. They are not equal. I cannot do that. So when graphing, you have to make sure that those intervals are the same distance apart, and this is not acceptable. So, during notes, you need to make sure that anything I've written down, you've written down. If there's any time that you have questions, you're writing those questions in the margins or you're sending me an email. Please come prepared to be able to discuss this and have any questions that you need to be asked. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.